Today, we are joined by Mike Cobb, co-founder of ECI Development. He's back again. Just to go over his bio, at the height of his successful career in the computer industry, Mike left to pursue more pioneering opportunities in the emergent real estate markets of Central America, helping people to purchase properties in Belize, Honduras, and throughout the region. ECI Development is a real estate development company working in Central and Latin America for over 20 years, creating people-centered, vibrant communities. They create value through socially responsible development of property. Welcome to the show again. Welcome back. How are you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm great, George. It's nice to be back. And I love renegade lifestyle and helping folks to kind of break free of the chains. It's mostly self-imposed chains. We hold ourselves in place with our ideas of what home should be and where we should work and how we should work. And I think renegade lifestyle really sums it up. At least it's how we break free. I don't know that it's all that renegade once we do it.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a powerful concept to help people understand that it doesn't have to be the way everyone always thinks it should be. Oh, I need to live here. I need to work down the street. Right? No. We got a world of options out there. And I think what you're doing to present that and get that message out is powerfully awesome. So thank you, man, for doing what you're doing.
I think that's why we changed the name, really. We wanted to make it a sort of lifestyle sense. I feel like it's a holistic approach. Obviously, I started doing the podcast with guys in their respective spaces like yourself. I think the actual lifestyle is important. It's a more holistic approach. And like you said, it's self-inflicted. I think it's a really different kind of interview than we would have had back in May, which will kind of, I don't know if you're feeling like this, but back then I felt like it wasn't self-imposed. It's kind of, you have to run away. But actually, it's your freedom's there already. You just choose to be part of that sort of, slave system at the moment. Yeah, it's actually that kind of thing now that I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I was just recently in the Czech Republic and I was speaking at the Free Cities Foundation. I don't know if you know those guys or not, Alex Voss and Titus Gebel. And anyway, they have a great program, the Free Cities Foundation. It's a group of folks working to build free cities, much like Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, right, to really capitalize once again on that incredible economic miracle. And the challenge they face, and the challenge I think folks like Viet over at Liberland face, is the sovereign issue, right? The sovereign countries, they don't want to give up sovereignty over any part of their territory. Some of the countries, now have things like free zones, right? Manufacturing free zones where, you can import the goods and stuff and do your factory thing and then send it back out. So free zones are out there. Honduras kind of dabbled around with the Zetes and Prospera being sort of a free city concept with, some constraints. A little freer than, say, a free zone, but not really an independent country. That's not sovereign in any sense, right? And sorry to just close that loop, Honduras is actually backtracking. The current government is removing a lot of their rights. They've said no more companies, no more entities can get this. And they're actually talking about pulling back some of the rights that were granted to Prospera and some of the Zetes there. So we'll see. I think that's going to end up in court in Honduras, and we'll see. But anyway, I was speaking with that group. They invited me to come to the Czech Republic, to Prague, and speak. And one of the slides in my presentation, you talked about self-inflicted. My presentation was freedom and responsibility, two sides of the same coin. And we can't really have responsible freedom unless we're responsible, right? We can have irresponsible freedom. That's just people being crazy, right? But to have responsible freedom, we have to have this responsibility. And so I was looking at the history of responsibility. Freud talked about people being afraid of that responsibility, and different people, different quotes and things like that. But Jean-Paul Sartre, somebody had drew a cartoon of Jean-Paul Sartre, his sort of very cynical view of human nature. And it has somebody, might be him, I think it's him holding this bird cage. And in the bird cage is a person, and he's telling the person, you're free, right? The door is actually open, and the little bubble coming from that person is, but I don't want to go out there. I think so much of this freedom is self-imposed. We have the freedom. We just have to exercise it. We have to have the courage to step outside of a very comfortable cage. Cages are comfortable. They really are comfortable. And I remember, I'm going to go off on a tangent, but it's somewhat related here, George. Sorry. So when we first opened up our Grand Pacifica project in Nicaragua, I moved there with my wife and 2-year-old daughter. We moved to Nicaragua. We thought we'd be there 2-3 years. And over the course of about 3.5 years, we built the company out, right? We hired architects, engineers, accounting people, finance people, the whole thing. We built a company of people to operate the business or build out our community, our Grand Pacifica community. And one of the things we did was to hire a chief operating officer so theoretically, I could go back to the United States. And I'll finish that in a second. But we hired this chief operating officer whose role was to put boundaries around the staff, right? I mean, because my management style is simply, hey, here's what needs to be done. Go do it. If you have any questions, ask me. But otherwise, I'm going somewhere else and I'm doing something else. And if I don't hear from you, I figure you got it, right? Well, it was horrible. That management style works for maybe 10 or 20% of the population, but 80% of the population needs much more, I say control, but parameters. They need more parameters around them. And that's not me. That's not how I manage. I'm not good at it. I got other things I got to do. So we hired the chief operating officer to come do it. And George, I absolutely believed in my heart of hearts that performance would go up. I believe that. We bring in somebody who can manage, help people put boundaries, put boxes, give people their space, right, and manage that. But what absolutely floored me was not only did performance go up, morale went up. George, I just was like, for the first time in my life, I kind of got it. I'm like, oh my gosh, people want boxes. They want, I hate to say that. It sounds, I don't mean to be pejorative or anything like that, but like, people want the box. People want that cage. The cage is safe. The cage is comfortable, right? And if we get outside that cage, oh my gosh, what could happen to us? Lots of things could happen to us. Some of them bad, many of them good, right? But a very small percentage of people really are willing to step outside that cage, even when the door's open, and take the risk, right? There is risk, right? But the rewards are just so incredible. But this idea of self-inflicted, it is so true, man. And by the way, we ended up staying in Nicaragua a total of 14 years because we loved it. We built the company. We hired the chief operating officer. I didn't have to be there anymore. I could live anywhere at that point. I needed to be there to get things formed up, but then I was done. But we stayed another 11 years. We were in Nicaragua 14 years and loved it, man. And it was a tremendous lifestyle for us. And the freedom to be able to choose to do that and then do it, right? And we did.
Yeah, I recently posted, there's 2 pictures. It's kind of a meme, but it's more of a truth meme than really like a funny meme. But like it was a lion in a zoo cage, basically. Free water, free food, free this, free that, just behind bars though, basically. And then you got underneath a lion that's free, but has to work for the food and everything like that. What would you rather be? Basically, that's kind of what sums up I don't like to say our society, but it sums up society in general.
It does.
Wants to be in that zoo cage. That's just how it is. But I think that's due to many things, like partly potentially ignorance, ingesting information that makes them carry on that way. But also, I think it is safety and insecurity and all kinds of different traumas and stuff like that that can make you, in that sort of sense, a tamed lion. But we all are lions, in my opinion. It's just trying to wake up that lion. Many people are waking up to being that lion, I believe. Like myself, I was a tamed lion in my cubicle for 10 years. And then I sort of woke up to the fact that I'm a lion and reached out and did my own thing and wanted to do better for humanity. And that's what I think that it's a great analogy about the bird cage as well. And it's just an interesting concept. But I do feel a lot more people are looking to that side of things now, actually trying to find that freedom. Well, actually, not find, but find it with themselves, actually. But yeah.
No, and it's true, George. And you know what? I worked in a cubicle for 13 years when I was in the computer industry, right? There's certain seasons of life where you're in a position, or I don't necessarily see it as bad or good. I'm not passing any judgment per se, right? Because I think different people are made up differently and have different ambitions in life. And the one thing that I think is a little bit sinister, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I don't think there's somebody pulling the strings on this, but the news media feeds so much negative, danger, kidnapping, murder, rape, theft, riots, war, starvation,
Yeah.
supply chain, economic collapse. I mean, you turn on the news, it's just this vomit of negativity. And by the way, I read, it was a science journal that talked about why the human brain is so attuned to negative. And I thought it was really interesting. And they said it was evolutionary, because what they said was, if somebody walked up to you when you were a hunter-gatherer, caveman, cavewoman, right? Said, hey, there's some berries up around the corner, down over the hill, across the creek. There's a great berry patch over there. You'd be like, that's awesome, right? I'm going there. They'll go pick some berries. But, you could go there now. You could go there in an hour. You could go there tomorrow, right? But if somebody walked up and you said, look out, there's a lion right there, or, saber-toothed tiger, right? You had to react immediately.
Yeah, the attention straight away.
And so what this article talked about, and I don't know how they proved it or whatever, maybe they didn't prove it, but I mean, this article was talking about how evolutionarily, if that's a word, anyway, how through evolution, our brains became hardwired for negative information because it's what kept us alive. The berries, that's important, but not urgent. The danger, urgent kind of thing, right? Again, I'm not a big conspiracy person on this to say that, somebody's telling the news media to feed us negative stuff. No. The old adage in newspapers, if it bleeds, it leads, right? If you want to sell newspapers, put the goriest stuff on the front page, people will buy those newspapers. And if people buying their newspapers, then you can sell advertising and you make money, right? So there's this sort of circular thing. And so we've just developed this 24-hour news cycle now, right? And like 24 hours a day on, 8, 10 different channels, you can just have negativity vomited all over you. And so when you have that, wow, I mean, it takes even more fortitude and more courage to be the lion that gets out of that cage and says, you know what, I'm going to go figure it out on my own. I'm going to go figure out how to kill something and eat it because I want to be free. And I'm willing to take that chance. But when we're so inundated with this negative messaging all the time, yeah, it really dampens people's enthusiasm to want to be free. Because first you have to want to be free. Then you have to take the action to do it, right? So I think the negativity dampens the want, the desire for freedom. And again, I think that's a big step, man. You did it. You took that big step, and more people are. But I think the collapse of this work environment really gave people the vision of what could be like in reality. I think people always dreamed like, I want to work from the beach or whatever. Like it was just a pipe dream. Nobody was really doing it, right? But the collapse of that management structure all of a sudden took a pipe dream and said, well, actually, I am doing it. I'm doing it from my apartment in New York City or whatever. I'm going to go to Belize and hang out on the beach. And people started doing it, and their world did not end. They didn't get fired. They still got promotion. They still got raises. And all of a sudden, it just opened this window of possibility that I think people couldn't see very clearly before.
Yeah, it showed a path, a different kind of location independence, which obviously the internet brought as well. But I would also say this, I think the media sort of pushes the fear, as you said, to sell. And then once you get that fear inside you, you feel small and you feel like you can't. You get that sort of overarching feeling that you're small and frail, basically, because everything's scary out there. I think that's pretty much sums up everything that's gone on in the last 2 years. But actually, like, due to the whole pandemic stuff, I think people kind of realized, like, maybe they can't trust the media finally. So kind of at that point, it's like now people can maybe look at alternatives. And I think this is opening the society's eyes to so much more. And I think maybe people will get over that fear now due to that. I know maybe a proportion won't, but I feel like it's opened people's eyes that wouldn't have previously.
Absolutely. Again, I'm not saying that there's not ill intent on the part of a lot of the news media companies. I mean, we're seeing it with the whole disinformation, canceling people, pulling people off, right, different platforms and stuff like that. I think that is all very purposeful, and I think that is all very much intentional. I do believe that, right? But I don't think the negativity in the media is intentional. I think, well, it is intentional. It's intentional from a profit standpoint. The news media was really exposed in a way, the hypocrisy of this whole disinformation, and now lots of things keep coming out. The problem is the stuff that comes out now ends up as a footnote on page 17 of some magazine or the newspaper, or it's this little blip and it just gets buried quickly by every other bad news event, right? But a lot more people are paying attention. And because we're paying attention, we're seeing that discord or this, real disconnect between what was said and what actually happened. And now what's being said, not even just news media, but the media, right? Whether Facebook, I don't know if they call themselves a news media, but the media, Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Plus the CNNs and Foxes and all those guys, right? I mean, Al Jazeera even, I throw them all in there. They're all telling some story, I think news media or media in general is the three blind men all trying to describe the elephant. One guy's talking about the tree trunk leg. One guy's talking about the trunk of the elephant like a snake. And the other guy's holding onto its tail saying, no, it's like a little stick or a feather or whatever, right? Three different people all describing the elephant, right? So I think all of these guys are trying to describe the elephant. And I think they've all got their angle on things, right? But at the end of the day, the media does something very, very smart. They'll come back and they will correct themselves as a footnote. So that if anyone ever calls them out on it, be like, no. Yeah, we corrected. We made a statement saying that we were wrong about something, right? But it gets buried so quickly, it's just heard by some tiny percentage of the people and then it's gone. But the people who are paying attention, and George, you're doing a great job of getting the information out to people to say, hey, pay attention. Look over here, guys, because there's really something you need to be aware of that you might not be aware of otherwise. And then giving people the encouragement they need to do this renegade lifestyle. And a lot of times the encouragement is just simply as you are, bringing people onto your program who have done it, who help other people do it. We've helped over 1,000 people. We ran the numbers recently. We've helped over 1,000 people own a property and get a second residency outside their home country. And I mentioned I was in Prague and I ran into a guy. It was funny. It's a small world, right? I ran into a guy from South Africa in Prague at this conference. He was one of the attendees and we were talking. And I said, yeah, we've been helping a bunch of people in South Africa, whatever. And he goes, are you helping them? This guy with Panama? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, because I didn't know the name or anything like that. His friends were working with some of our salespeople to help them get second residencies in Panama because of all the collapse of society, happening in South Africa. So it was just really funny to meet some customers who I didn't know were customers, right, in Prague at this event. So George, you're helping people by showing them a path, but you're also showing them that other people have walked this path and it's not as scary as it would be made out to be, right?
Yeah, I think the first step for me is showing people that there's alternatives to all sides of the society they feel is the norm. And then showing them a more free way. I don't want to say better, but for me it is. But I would say there's an alternative. And then they can give their views on how they want to act on that. But another side is we have people in our team that have done that. One of the crypto trader who lives in Mexico is financially independent due to crypto trading. And he's been making some amazing calls. So he wants to help people free themselves financially and exit the 9 to 5, earn an income which is location independent. And, I help people with creating freedom businesses where, let's say you're a teacher or someone in the sort of mainstream environment, you can transfer those skills into the sort of alternative environment where instead of being a teacher in an indoctrination camp in a school, a government school anyway, why not create a new type of school, a new private school which teaches things differently and allows kids to grow in a non-biased way and allows them to sort of be more free in the sense. So there's so many different ways and we help with that. And I think it's important at this point because I think there's a lot of people searching for solutions and that's the main thing, not focusing on the negatives. Oh, this is happening, that's happening, that's going to happen. I was caught up in that during COVID, but then at some point you want solutions and change your life and you can. That's another big reason why I've sort of connected with you because I know ECI gives the opportunity for someone to leave potentially a country where they're not happy or they feel like it's a little bit too socialist or a little bit too controlled for them, where they can live somewhere which is a bit more freedom mindset and also potentially just a nicer climate or wanting to live in an autonomous type of home, which I know that you guys do. We've spoken about previously as well. Let's touch upon ECI a little bit. I know whoever's listened to this podcast with you before the interview previously, they kind of know what ECI is. Just give a small for the people who haven't heard, just a small sort of intro on ECI, and then I guess go into what the new projects are now, what you're doing at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. We started our company in 1996. So we're 26 years old this year. And our basic business model is to build resort communities for people who want to live in Central America, Latin America, because we're looking at South America now as well. So, and we're actually in Europe as well. We're in Portugal, but the vast majority of our communities are in Latin America and the Azores, specifically in Portugal. But one of the things that we've done and we do very, very well is we build intentional communities, intentional neighborhoods, I would say. I mean, look, you have a community of people who listen to your podcast, and that community overlaps with other people who, have similar podcasts or similar types of conferences and events, right? Freedom-loving individuals. And so I would call that this online community. It's a community of people who are online connected. But what's really cool is when you can actually take and create a physical place for this online community to own a home and come and enjoy the company of one another, actually vacation there, live there. And so we've been able to do that. It's incredibly satisfying, George, to be able to find a group of folks who are crypto, for example. Our most recent community, our Ava and Bella community at Grand Pacifica, we have 80 homes under construction right now. 44, you ready for this? 44 of those 80, so that's half-ish, a little more than half, but whatever, used crypto to purchase their homes. So it's a crypto-friendly community of people. It's a neighborhood. It's an oceanfront neighborhood. The Bella's right on the ocean. The Ava's 100, 150 yards from the ocean, at price points that are very affordable. Direct oceanfront, $400,000, $399,000 for an oceanfront home. Ocean view, 100, 150 yards from the Pacific Ocean. Off-grid solar home for $150,000, right? So we've created these very affordable communities, these neighborhoods, right? Where people who share similar philosophies and ideals. You talked about a teacher and an education. We have folks who are actually setting up a program right now. It's trial at this point, but a woman has set up a small school, and a bunch of the folks who are living at Grand Pacifica now are participating to help her really crank this thing up. And it really will be this alternative to the mainstream kind of indoctrination that people would get in the US and Canada, probably in many parts of Europe as well. Right. So all of a sudden, being with people who don't think you're a freak or like crazy or whatever they label you as, right? You're hanging out with people who are crypto friendly generally, who are freedom oriented, and you have the ability to make friends and socialize and have a real physical community. And all the things that we've done as a company over the years, I've got to say, that one's probably one of the most satisfying personally for me. We were approached by Mike Peterson, who is the godfather of Bitcoin in El Salvador. He started Bitcoin in El Zonte about, 5 years ago now, and he owns a piece of property. He approached us about a year and a half ago. I was speaking at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and he sought me out, said, "Hey, Mike, would you be willing to build a community for Bitcoiners on my property in El Zonte?" And so we went back and forth, and we eventually, over a few months, we figured it out. We said, yeah, we'll build a community for Bitcoiners. And so that's in the works. We've got an engineering company doing all the engineering designs basically we're taking a piece of land and we're turning it into a small town. It sounds crazy, George, but what we do is we build villages. We build small towns. We take a piece of property and we put in the water, the sewer, the telecommunication, the roads. We are the security company in many cases. So effectively, we're the police. We are the municipality. So the nice thing is because we're that, we can really respond to the community, that very specific community's desires. And so let me give you an example. So the Bitcoin is in El Salvador, but we were asked, maybe 6-8 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago now, a woman by the name of Karen to design a neighborhood for people who are sensitive to EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. And so we got a meter, we ran around Grand Pacifica, we found this, it's a little bit of a bowl. It's kind of an interesting piece of property. It's a little bit of a bowl, and it has very, very low radiation readings from microwaves and cell and all that kind of stuff. So we had the meter, we tested it, right? And so we're working with Karen and a building biologist that she recommended to actually create a neighborhood for people who are sensitive to EMF. And one of the reasons we can do it is we We're the first fiber to the home community in all of Central America. Back in 2004, we put fiber to the home at Grand Pacifica. And so we have the ability to deliver fiber to that neighborhood, wire it to the house so people can actually hardwire into their home, right? They can plug in as opposed to having all the Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But fiber's not infinite bandwidth, but for practical purposes, infinite bandwidth, it's fiber, right? But see, in this community, in this neighborhood, I'm going to call it a neighborhood, in this neighborhood, the covenants and restrictions will be that you're not allowed to use a cell phone outside. It's against the rules of that neighborhood. And so we can create a neighborhood that has rules. I hate to use, people don't like rules, but let's call it that. Let's just say what it is, right? Because it is that. It's rules. Like if you choose by choice to live in that neighborhood, you are also choosing to not use your cell phone outside your home. That's part of the conditions of owning in that neighborhood or visiting, because it'll apply to visitors as well, right? And so we've created a neighborhood for people who are sensitive to EMF and build the conditions, the rules, the regulations, whatever you want to call them, right, around that to preserve that for the people who own in that neighborhood. It's so exciting to be asked to do something like that and then to actually begin to learn how to do it, right? I didn't know very much about it. So I live in West Virginia, and there's a place called Green Bank, West Virginia, which is a haven for people who are EMF sensitive. They've got some big radio telescopes there. And so like they've shut down every cell and whatever. So people who are EMF sensitive have flocked to Green Bank, West Virginia for that reason, right? So I knew about that, but I didn't know very much about it. But there are ways that you actually build a house, different types of building materials, the way you insulate conduit, the types of windows and reflective material. And there's apparently reflective paints. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff you can do to really shield people from the electromagnetic frequencies. So getting into it and learning about it has been very exciting for me, and designing this community. In fact, we will be announcing it sometime in December. So if folks listening to this want to hear about it, they should reach out to you, George. You can forward their information to us. We will put them on the list to hear about it as soon as it's public. But you're getting sort of a sneak preview of what we're working on, but very, very exciting. So I think that's it. I mean, you asked what else we're doing. We're doing some good stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, the EMF thing, actually. I wouldn't know how you would know that you're EMF sensitive, but that's a very interesting community. There's one question I do have about the community aspect. How are rules or decisions made?
We do that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, right? So for example, Grand Pacifica has a general set of rules, of behavior, right? I mean, you can't play music at 4 a.m. loud, right? I mean, just sort of all the normal stuff that's respectful of others, right? And it's all transparent. The point is that when you own, right, you're agreeing to a certain set of rules that govern everything. You can't drive on the golf course. I mean, we have a golf course, right? And believe it or not, people drive on the golf course. You're like, I would have thought you didn't need to be told to not drive on the golf course. But anyway, people do, and we've told them not to. So we put together this sort of general provisions of what this neighborhood is and what the whole resort community is. And then each neighborhood actually has subset rules that are either tighter or looser. We have one neighborhood called San Diego Viejo with very, very tight architectural covenants and restrictions. If you want to build there, it has to be a Nicaraguan, Spanish colonial, Nicaraguan provincial. It has to have a real clay tile roof. It has to have certain square footages and all that kind of stuff. We have another neighborhood that has a lot less restrictions. And in fact, we're creating another neighborhood that will have almost no restrictions. I mean, for people who really want, like, I would call it total freedom, might be total chaos, but that's okay. Because if you're buying into chaos, right, and you say, well,
That's your decision. Yeah.
It's a decision, right? But again, the idea is to have this put up front so everybody understands exactly what they're doing. They make the conscious decision that they want to be in a neighborhood where they have to build a certain way with a clay tile roof, or I want to be over here and I want to build an igloo, and I don't care if somebody builds a pink lighthouse next door, right? Doesn't matter, right? Anyway, so each neighborhood can kind of further define what is relevant to them. But basically, I mean, I guess you could have a neighborhood where there are no noise restrictions, right? If somebody wants to have, whatever. I mean, but again, if everybody knows it up front, if it's part of the terms and conditions that you agree to contractually, well, that's freedom, right? That's the point.
There's something for everyone, which is interesting. So basically, I think it works in small communities / neighborhoods like you describe, where there is potentially some governance, but in a small community environment where you can basically be accountable. The person who, let's say, is making certain decisions or is at least heading up that community, at least is accountable in that small community. When it doesn't work in nation states because it just can't, because there's
Too
always,
big.
it's too big, yeah, and you can't get accountability at that level. So I think in a small community environment, it's very easy to, if you don't like something, to change things, and especially if everyone, to a certain extent, in that neighborhood is quite aligned on many things, which it sounds like there is some alignment in each different neighborhood as they've agreed to certain things at that point.
Right. That's really what we've tried to do, is create different neighborhoods where there can be different viewpoints, different alignments that don't impact the other neighborhoods, but yet serve the people who want to be in that neighborhood how they want to be served or how they want to live, right?
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. No, it's good to hear that, you're carrying on. There's still more new projects out there from ECI. Just never ends. It's
Yeah.
really good. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing more. I didn't know that you were actually building something, or you have built something in Portugal, actually, because I'm in Europe. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
We just acquired it, George. We picked it up. It's an old manor house, an old villa that was started in 1687, finished in 1850, and it's been run as a bed and breakfast for the last 25 years. It's on the island of San Miguel, the little town of Maya. It's spectacular. It's a great location. It has beautiful ocean views. You're about 20 minutes from a couple golf courses, Furnace, which is the hot springs, great hiking, whale watching. If you're a surfer, a phenomenal surf beach called Santa Barbara, close by, great restaurants. And so we're going to continue to operate it as a bed and breakfast for the next couple years while we do our planning. And we also acquired the property next door, and we'll build somewhere around 20 to 25 residences for sale there in a couple years. But for the next couple years, yeah, come visit sometime. It's a bed and breakfast. It's wonderful. All the rooms were furnished in period. It was bought at estate sales, antique sales. So the furniture's, 18th and 19th century furniture. It's a neat place.
Sounds good. I'm definitely want to put that in my plans to come and visit. And also, I have some friends in Portugal living off grid. And I think also, Portugal seems like a place where it's slightly more free, in a sense, in compared to other European nations. And I think that property prices are pretty low, actually, compared to other places,
They
which
are.
I've checked in. Yeah. So I'm guessing it's easier to acquire as well. And they're less strict on who can buy and all that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely worth visiting Portugal. Definitely worth potentially going to the Azores and checking out what ECI is doing over there as well, which I'll definitely be doing, and hopefully in the next couple of years.
You got a little baby coming. That's going to change your life a little bit. I promise to tell 2 stories.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That is a bit of news. Yeah. So life will change.
It's exciting,
I'm sure
man.
it is exciting. Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Life will change. It's my first. So all the emotions. Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah, man. I think we should pass it over to you for the stories I know you wanted to tell.
2 quick stories. So I don't even know if you have these in Europe or not, but somebody got us this diaper genie. I don't know how to describe it. It's this container. It's about maybe a meter tall, maybe 80 centimeters, 20 centimeters round. It's got this giant long bag inside it. So when the baby, poops and pees, and which they do a lot when they're little, 10, 12, 15 times a day. Right? Diapers. So you put it in there, you twist the lid, and it kind of seals up the dirty diaper, and you just keep doing it. When the bin fills up, you open it up, you clip it, you tie the new one, and you take the 50 little diaper things and throw them away. There's no smell, no mess. It's great, right?
Sounds like I need to get some of them.
Diaper genie, man. I'm telling you, it's phenomenal. But about, I'm going to say maybe 10 days into the baby, the bag runs out, right? This big long bag, it's in the lid, right? It's up in the lid. It runs out. And I can tell you, for the first 10 days, you don't know what sleep deprived is. Maybe if you were in the army, you might know what sleep deprived is. I had no idea what sleep deprived was. So 10 days into this thing, the bag runs out. I open this thing up. I got the new bag to put in, and I'm sitting there. George, I couldn't figure out how to do it. My IQ had dropped 50 points. I was so tired. I just sat there on the floor with this thing apart in front of me. I just couldn't figure it out. Thank goodness I had a buddy named Brian who'd had kids a couple years ahead of us. I called Brian. I said, in fact, I think it was him that got me the diaper genie. And And I said, Brian, man, you got to help me. I just don't know how to change this thing. And he talked me through it, right? I got to put back together. And sure enough, then, whatever, we got, the next 10 days. And by then I'm normal again. Dude, you're going to be so sleep deprived. You're going to be stupid. So be careful. The whole point of that story is don't make any important decisions in the first 3 or 4 weeks of a baby. Your IQ will go way down.
Yeah, I've heard so much about that.
Let me tell you the story that brings tears to my eyes every time I tell it. So, your wife has the baby inside her, and it's real for your wife in a way. It wasn't real for me. People would say, oh, you're having a baby. You're like, yeah, I'm having a baby. Man, Carol, my wife's Carol. Say, touch the tummy. You feel it kicking? Yeah, I felt it kick. That's pretty cool, right? But you hear what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It kicked. I mean, like it was this intellectual understanding. That's all it was. Like if somebody said, do you love the baby? I was like, of course I love the baby. What kind of dumb question is that? Whatever, right? Okay. I was there at the birth when Amanda popped out, right? I'm there. I mean, Amanda came out. George, it went from this intellectual, like, yeah, I'm having a kid, to I would throw myself in front of a train to save this kid. I mean,
instantly. Was it instant?
I mean, instant. Yeah. Oh my God, George, the love. I just couldn't believe how much love came from nothing into me in an instant. It was one of the most overwhelming experiences of my life. I mean, to go from like not loving it, really, honestly, whatever, not loving it, to loving it so much you would die for it. Like that, dude.
That's such an interesting story, man. I literally feel kind of how you described. I think for men, and I don't want to be all gender stuff, I don't care, but like for men, usually we're very logical and we think with that logical brain, and until it happens, I always thought it to myself, until it happens, it won't like truly feel like it's happening. And it's just amazing that you told that, because I think I'm feeling that way that you described before the birth, right? And it's interesting. I think you have to learn to be, I've got told this as well. I don't know where I heard this, but this is the like order of like where you stand in the family unit and to others. It goes, how's the baby? How's the wife? How's the dog or the cat? And then you're the guy there supporting it all. We just got to be there to support that. That's an amazing story. And I'm sure I'll feel like that too.
And it's wonderful. I mean, and by the way, unconditional love. Yeah, I understand why we're granted this unconditional love, because I have a second daughter who's 18 and my 22-year-old. My 22-year-old has probably spoken all of 100 words to me in the last 3 years. And, this is the one that I would have thrown myself in front of a train for, okay? She's spoken like 100 words to me in the last 3 years. So I understand why we have unconditional love, because boy, like some of that, you're just like, wow, but it's the process of growing up. It's the process of separation. I understand it intellectually. It hurts your heart when your baby, well, in my case, baby girls, like they're separating, but it's all right. It's all good. It's the nature of things.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. The beauty of family.
Speaking of that, let me say that raising those 2 daughters overseas was maybe the best gift we could have ever given them. I am a huge fan of raising your children outside your home culture, right? Spend time, maybe not the whole time, right? But some of the time outside your home culture. Yes, learning a language is great. Don't get me wrong. Learning a language is great. Learning that culture is a imposed structure, okay?
Yes.
Just the understanding that culture is not assumed, it's a thing. I mean, it is assumed, right? I need to get better language for this, George. But anyway, for most people, culture is just what is, and there isn't anything else, right? It's just like, I'm an American and this is my culture. And is there something else? Not really. Yeah, I understand intellectually. But when you grow up in 2 cultures, you now have this conscious understanding of culture as opposed to an unconscious acceptance of it, right? That is even more important than multilingual. It's multicultural. And boy, George, I can just see it in my girls and how they interact with the world. Like they approach the world differently. They approach it in a much more, gosh, I hate to use the word, but let me use the word mature. They're old for their years. They are old for their years in so many ways that I see their peers just don't get it, right? That like it's just over their heads or by them.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I mean, when I was 19, up until 19, I only visited Cyprus and the UK. I lived in the UK. Cyprus was a place where basically my family are from. So I kind of knew the language already, which was the Greek side. I obviously lived in the UK. So I only knew kind of two home cultures, really, in a sense. And only until I visited China, South Africa, Mexico, other loads of European countries, but definitely the out of Europe countries kind of really open your eyes a lot. At that point, you open your mind so much more to it all. Exactly how you explained it. It really just kind of adds the pages to your book. Instead of just reading one page, you've got, multiple chapters that you can read from, and you can understand more of the world instead of being in just one tunnel vision or two tunnel visions, let's say.
Exactly. Tunnel vision. I think that's a good way to describe it. Right.
Yeah. Well, we've run out of time. I know you've got to run off as well.
Another great conversation, George.
Yeah, another one. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Where can people find your work? Just where can people find ECI and yourself?
Yeah, I always love to hear from people who have heard us together on a podcast. So if they just send an email to info@ecidevelopment.com and just write something like, George Papp, Renegade Lifestyle, I don't care. Just put something in the subject line that says you were listening to this. And if you have questions or you want to receive any of our information, we actually have a consumer resource guide. The consumer resource guide right here. This document is a phenomenal document. It's not a sales document. If you're thinking about owning property overseas, you should have a copy of that. We'd love to send it to you. But yeah, info@ecidevelopment.com. Let us know that you were watching this or listening to this, and we'll send you some information and keep in touch. The EMF Village. And you know what? If that's something that you're really concerned about or would like to learn more about, definitely get us something sooner rather than later. We'll get you on the first distribution list.
Perfect. Excellent stuff. We'll have all the links, relevant links in the show notes. You can contact me as well if you want to just ask me about it, and I can point you in the right direction to those guys, to ECI and Mike. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I guess check out the renegadelifestyle.net, which is the new website for our stuff, for all the podcasts and for all the membership information. Also share and subscribe to the podcast itself. If you believe that you know someone that it could help, you can share it to those guys as well, if that gives them value. Peace and love to you all. Thanks for listening.